one thing that's very important. And that's two deeply inspiring heroes that were involved in the events of the night and evening of Benghazi. That's Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty. These two men are powerful examples of what every military man and woman should aspire to be, what every civilian considers absolute, true bravery and heroism. I want to think that someday, and I am absolutely convinced that their bravery will be etched in history forever as something that even young men and women can look up to and say, that is a hero. And that's what they were. They both were heroes that fought the fear, went to the roof, and stood in the stand of a gross, amorphous enemy, and both gave their lives up for their country. And they left a legacy that will last for generations. I want to recognize them, both Ty and Glenn, this evening. And Benghazi is also an important reminder of what government will do without proper constitutional constraints. We witnessed the President of the United States and the Secretary of State command a secret operation that placed Ty Woods, Glenn Doherty, Ambassador Chris Stevens, and Sean Smith in this position where they lost their lives in a violent, amorphous attack, an attack that never should have happened. And alarmingly, as we all know and without question, the President of the United States and his Secretary of State lied about it publicly, not only to us, the American people, but to the international community at the United Nations. They lied. When a government lies to its people, we have a constitutional crisis. Benghazi is yet another chilling example of what we're facing in America with this government that so desperately needs to change and return back to its origins. In secret, without the knowledge or consent of you, of us, the American people, and without the knowledge of the majority of Congress, the highest levels of our government engaged in a secret operation, essentially running guns and heavy weapons into Libya, circumventing U.S. and even international law. The Secretary of State, using two foreign intermediaries, avoided U.S. restrictions and assisted in the funding and coordination of an operation that was running weapons to Islamic rebels and extremists in Libya, Benghazi, and ultimately up into Syria. And the government knew full well these rebel factions included members directly connected to al-Qaeda. They knew it. The information was there. The intelligence was there. Horrifically, many of these weapons and several fighters covertly trained by the U.S. in secret wound up arming and expanding the group that we now abhor, the group called ISIS. Libya is now in a state of chaos. Al-Qaeda is flourishing and terrorist splinter groups are everywhere. The President and the Secretary of State thumbed their nose at constitutional protections requiring Congress and the voice of the people to make these decisions in foreign intervention, and in their arrogance, considered themselves above the restraints of a constitutional republic. They were able to do this because of what I call the new form of tyranny, the modern tyranny. I call it the tyranny of secrecy. Government secrecy now cancels out, and especially in this case, the involvement of the U.S. Congress in serious decisions like this one that have resulted in the complete and total destabilization of Libya, Iraq, and now Syria, and facilitated the expansion of terrorist groups throughout that entire region. Like a shadow government, a government that functions in secret outside the Constitution, PSD 11, as Claire mentioned, is a document that is classified secret, withheld from the Congress, withheld from any input whatsoever from we the people, still secret, still classified today. And what we know from what is leaked out, it was, thank God, the mandate to establish the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood in governments throughout that region. It was treasonous at the very start, done in secret, without Congress and without you, the American people. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton planned an operation to support the Brotherhood, the oldest terrorist organization in the world, and install it as the new government in Libya without any of our knowledge. ISIS is a prime example of what we in the intelligence community used to call blowback. Blowback is when an operation that's conducted under the cloak of secrecy goes so badly, it blows up so badly, it winds up accomplishing the opposite of what it was supposed to do. And that's what we have in Libya, blowback. That never should have happened. But I want to ask us something that's important this evening. We have to ask ourselves a question in a constitutional government that is so critical. And this is why we're in the crisis we are in today. Who voted to approve the transport of heavy arms, missiles, and equipment to Islamic rebels with clear connections to terrorism? Anybody in this room vote for that? Anybody in this room know about that? Who voted for the Secretary of State to secretly organize a plan to remove Muammar Gaddafi, who was no prince but was now cooperating with the U.S., to remove him from power, allowing him to be killed in essentially what was a de facto assassination? Just allowing him to be killed, but just not doing it directly. Who voted for the President and the Secretary of State to facilitate a plan to install the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization in the government of Libya? Did anybody out there vote for that? No. Did anybody out there know about that? No. That is the tyranny of secrecy. Where was Congress, our Congress, the only constitutional representative of the people? Where was Congress in the decision-making process for a foreign operation that ruined the country of Libya, placed it in the hands of terrorists, and has resulted in a protracted war in Syria where over 500,000 civilians have been killed? Where was Congress? Who told Congress what was happening in Benghazi? Who advised Congress that they were running guns through cutouts into Libya? No one. Now, there are a couple congressmen we understand probably knew, but the bulk of Congress was left out of those secret decisions. Violating the Constitution in that fashion is treasonous, and I have to remind us all that violating the Constitution is a violation of the supreme law of the land. It is a felony. It is multiple felonies in this case. So, we must never forget what Benghazi as an operation, as a secret operation, means. It means our government acted in darkness with absolute impunity, deftly using the vast matrix of government secrecy, which I call the shadow government, the secret government. Some secrecy is good, we know that, it protected some of our lives. But the system of secrecy that functions outside of Congress without its knowledge and approval. Some are now calling that the deep state, and I think that's perfectly fine. Some of us were talking about that when it was not safe to do so. But now apparently it's safe. But I want us all to understand that the shadow government and the deep state are not the same thing. They are connected in a matrix, without a doubt. But the shadow government is the mechanism of secrecy and the secret apparatus that has been designed to function outside the Constitution, connected to the deep state mechanism. It has, and Benghazi is a primary example, it has circumvented constitutional law. It has blinded the U.S. Congress. The U.S. Congress has the authority to regulate the intelligence community, the CIA and others, to regulate them through their budget. The problem is the CIA and other organizations classify that budget so Congress has no access to what the money is really being used for. Now, there's a lot of good things I did when I was there, but I think it's critical that we abide by the Constitution and we stay with an open Congress and an open people and let secrecy fall under that system and that system alone. Benghazi completely removed the voice of the American people from serious and far-reaching actions destabilizing an entire region involving the significant loss of human life. So yes, we do. We have a constitutional crisis in America, and a desperate one. You can ask anybody in this audience and even outside, everyone knows in their gut that there's something wrong in Washington, D.C. Terribly wrong. So the time has come for change, and this audience right here is change. You all are change. It's so inspiring to see everyone here because the change is beginning, and I believe it's starting to explode. Americans are beginning to wake up to the crisis, to this constitutional crisis by the millions. And they're beginning to demand that our government return to the Constitution on which it was founded. Benghazi, a permanent reminder that we must continue to stand up and stand firm if we want to preserve the freedoms that we still have left in America. Millions of Americans made their voice heard in this last U.S. election, and they made it heard loudly. That election shocked the world. Thank God. And it upset the globalist goal for destabilization of American sovereignty, stopped that dead in its tracks. And those millions of Americans that enabled that shocking event of that transition to happen in America, those millions of Americans are still there. Many of them all of them are sitting right here, and there's vastly more than people see or know about. And those numbers are increasing, almost exponentially. So stand we must, together, with a new resolve that our government is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, excuse me, and no complex matrix of unconstitutional government secrecy is going to stand in the way of our constitutional law. The time of the tyranny of secrecy and secret government that is abused and misused by politicians at the highest levels of our government, it's time for that to end. And it's time for Congress to return to the voice of the people, representing the people, and directing our government by the people. That time is here. It's been passed. It's exploding. I believe in my heart of hearts that it's going to happen. And I want to leave you with one final quote, and I want us all to remember this because it is so important. When people fear their government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. Thank you very much.